The wind howled like a wild beast, rattling the windows of the small, humble house on the edge of town. The rain came down in sheets, drumming on the roof as if the sky itself was breaking apart. Inside, a single father sat quietly by the fireplace, watching the flames flicker. His little daughter was already asleep, tucked under warm blankets in the next room. For him, nights like these were always lonely, filled with thoughts of struggles, unpaid bills, and the silent weight of responsibility. But tonight was different. A sudden, desperate knock at the door startled him. It was unusual, no one ever came this far during such a storm. For a moment, he hesitated, his heart pounding. Who could it be? Another knock followed, louder this time, filled with urgency. He got up, pulling his old sweater tighter around him, and walked to the door. As he opened it, the cold wind rushed inside, making the flames behind him tremble. Standing there was a woman, drenched from head to toe, her hair sticking to her face, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking, "I just need somewhere safe until the storm passes." Without a second thought, he nodded and stepped aside. "Come in. You'll catch your death out there." She entered, shivering as water dripped from her clothes onto the wooden floor. He hurried to fetch a blanket, wrapping it gently around her shoulders. The woman murmured a soft thank you, her voice filled with both relief and something he couldn't quite place, maybe sadness. He didn't ask who she was or why she was here in the middle of nowhere. To him, she was simply a stranger in need, and that was enough. But little did he know, this stormy night was not just about the weather outside. It was the beginning of a storm inside his heart, one that would change his life forever. The small living room felt warmer now, not just from the fire but from the presence of the stranger. She sat quietly on the couch, clutching the blanket around her as though it was the only thing keeping her together. The storm outside roared, but inside the house, there was an almost fragile silence. The single dad moved about, trying to make her comfortable. He brewed a cup of tea, placing it gently in front of her. "This should help," he said softly. She lifted her eyes to his for the first time, and he was struck by how tired they looked, like someone who had carried too much for far too long. "You live here alone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just me and my daughter," he replied, nodding toward the closed door where the little girl slept peacefully. "It's not much, but it's home." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "It feels safe," she said, sipping the tea. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the cup, but he pretended not to notice. He wanted to ask her questions, who she was, why she was out in the storm, what she was running from, but something in her eyes told him not to push. Instead, he let the silence sit between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant thunder rolling through the night. Minutes turned into an hour. Slowly, she began to relax, her shoulders dropping as if the weight she carried was too heavy to hold onto anymore. She glanced around the modest home, the old furniture, the worn carpet, the pictures of a father and daughter smiling together on the wall. Something about it all seemed to soften her. "You didn't have to let me in," she murmured. "Most people wouldn't." He gave a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Storms don't care who you are. Everyone deserves a safe place in nights like this." Her gaze lingered on him, almost studying the kindness in his eyes. For a brief moment, she felt seen not as the person the world knew her as, but just as a woman lost in the storm. And though he had no idea who she really was, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't just chance. Something told him their paths had crossed for a reason, and the night was only the beginning of a story neither of them expected. The storm raged on outside, but inside, the little house glowed with warmth. The stranger, still wrapped in the old blanket, watched the firelight dance on the walls. For the first time in hours, maybe even days, she felt a sense of peace. The single dad returned from the kitchen with a small tray of food. It wasn't much, just bread, some soup he had managed to put together, but he placed it in front of her with a simple smile. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep you warm." Her eyes softened as she looked at him. "You don't even know me, and yet you're doing all this." He shrugged. "You looked like you needed help. That's all that matters." As she ate slowly, she glanced at the photos on the wall again. One in particular caught her attention, him holding his little girl, both of them laughing under the sunlight. The happiness in that picture was undeniable. "She looks just like you," the woman said softly, nodding toward the photo. His expression lit up. "She's my world. Everything I do, it's for her." His voice carried both pride and exhaustion, the kind only a single parent knows. Something inside her stirred. She had lived in a world of glass towers and boardrooms, where success was measured by numbers, and emotions were locked away. Seeing the simple love of a father for his daughter touched her in a way she couldn't explain. "You must be strong," she whispered. He chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "Strong? Maybe. But most days, I'm just trying to survive." The words hit her harder than he knew. For all her power, all her wealth, she too was surviving, but in a different storm. A storm of expectations, responsibilities, and loneliness. For the first time, she allowed herself to open up, just a little. "Sometimes, it feels like the world demands too much of you, doesn't it?" Their eyes met, and for a fleeting second, he saw something hidden beneath her calm face. Pain. Secrets. A story untold. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. But I guess the storms don't last forever. You just keep going until the sun comes out again." The words comforted her more than he realized. Sitting there, sharing nothing more than food and quiet conversation, she felt an unfamiliar sense of belonging. Neither of them knew it yet, but this storm had brought them together for a reason. And before the night ended, their lives would be tied together in ways they never imagined. By morning, the storm had finally begun to ease. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and faint rays of sunlight pushed through the heavy clouds. The little house felt calmer, as though the worst had passed. The stranger, now dry and rested, stood by the window, staring out at the world with a thoughtful expression. The single dad was busy preparing breakfast, humming softly as his daughter skipped into the room, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Good morning, Daddy," the little girl said, climbing into his arms. He kissed her forehead, his entire face lighting up with love. The woman watched quietly, her heart melting at the simple, pure bond they shared. It was something she had never truly experienced in her own life. "Good morning," the father said, smiling at the woman. "I hope you slept well." "I did," she answered softly. "Thank you for everything." Just as he was about to reply, a sudden sound broke the peace outside. Car doors slammed, voices echoed, and through the thin curtains, she caught sight of two sleek black cars pulling up near the house. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the area as if they were on high alert. The single dad frowned, confused. "Who are they?" he asked, turning toward her. Her face paled. She set the teacup down with trembling hands. There was no hiding anymore. "They're looking for me," she admitted, her voice heavy with hesitation. He blinked, taken aback. "Looking for you? Why? Who exactly are you?" For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then she finally met his eyes, her voice firm but vulnerable. "I'm not just some lost traveler. My name is Elena, and I'm the CEO of Hartwell Industries." The words hit him like thunder. He nearly dropped the pan he was holding. A CEO? He glanced at her clothes, her composure, the elegance she carried even in exhaustion, and suddenly, it all made sense. "You're serious?" he asked, disbelief thick in his tone. She nodded slowly. "I didn't want you to know. For once, I wanted to be just a woman. Not a title, not power, not wealth. Just me." The little girl looked between them innocently, unaware of the weight of the moment. The single dad's mind swirled with questions. Why would a powerful CEO end up in a storm, knocking on the door of a stranger's small house? But before he could ask more, the men outside began moving toward the door. The truth was out, and with it, a storm far greater than the one that had passed. The knock on the door was sharp, commanding. The single dad tensed, but the woman, Elena, placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It's all right," she said quietly. "They work for me. They were sent to find me when I didn't return last night." He opened the door reluctantly, and the suited men stepped back respectfully when they saw her. "Ma'am," one of them said, bowing his head, "your car is ready." We should return immediately. Elena looked at them, then back at the small home that had sheltered her. Her gaze lingered on the single father and his daughter, standing together in the warm glow of the morning light. For the first time in years, she felt torn not between business decisions or company deals, but between two worlds. The life waiting for her was powerful, demanding, and cold. The life she had found here, even for just one night, was simple, warm, and real. She turned back to the men. "I'll come soon. Give me a moment." They hesitated, then stepped outside. The single dad crossed his arms, still struggling to process everything. "So, what now? You go back to your world, and I go back to mine?" His voice carried no bitterness, only the quiet acceptance of a man used to watching things slip away. Elena's heart ached. She walked closer, her eyes steady on his. "You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. You didn't care who I was, what I had, or the weight I carried. You just saw me." He swallowed hard, unsure what to say. His daughter, ever innocent, tugged at Elena's hand. "Will you come back and visit us?" the little girl asked sweetly. Elena knelt down, her eyes brimming with tears as she hugged the child. "If your daddy will let me. I'd love to." The single dad's heart softened at the sight. The storm that had brought her to his doorstep was gone, but another storm, one of emotions, swirled inside him. He had no riches, no grand house, nothing to offer but love and honesty. And maybe that was enough. Elena stood, taking a deep breath. This doesn't have to be goodbye. Maybe it's just the beginning. He looked into her eyes and, for the first time, allowed himself to hope. The storm had brought a stranger to his door. But love, the kind that sees beyond titles and status, had chosen to stay.